Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Happy Saturday. Um, this is such a special thing. The energy of this event has been growing over the past several days, and I'm so excited we're finally here. Welcome to Magical Storytelling and Tarot Drawing on Medieval Fictions as Modern Readers with Veronica Minaldi. I'm going to introduce her more formally when we officially get started, but well, you probably know she's already amazing. And yeah, we're going to start a little bit after 12. We'll actually start with the official webinar, but for everyone here that's early, we're going to start doing some readings for you. So really quick, I'm going to just, whoa, don't do full screen. I don't like that. It feels like I lose control. I just want to welcome Eileen, Matthew, Sue, Jose, Mars, Debbie, Carla, Nadia, Candice, Veronica, Adriana, Joe, SpongeBob, and all the other people that are coming in. So yeah, I think what we'll do is if you, Sue, Anastasia, welcome. So happy to see you. So yeah, what we'll do is we're gonna just do some fun readings to warm up while people are filing in. And if you'd like to get read, you can, Renee, welcome. You can just put your question in the chat and Veronica and I will do a short reading for you. By the way, Veronica is finally, it took many aeons, but finally, I'm so happy to announce that she is accepting clients. And I'm so excited for this because Veronica's an amazingly talented reader, a super smart academic, a writer, a lecturer. She just seamlessly combines her academic rigor with her intuition and her practice to give really amazing readings. So now's an amazing opportunity to get a free reading from Veronica. And she also has, well, she'll tell you, but she has a really cool special offer. All right, Candice is asking, what can I do to feel better physically?
All right, let's find out. Candice, I'm going to ask you to tell me when to stop shuffling. So I'm shuffling now. I don't have Joe's awesome skills of shuffling yet, but I'm getting there. So just let me know when I should stop. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm going to take your comment if I can't unmute to be stopped. So I'm going to stop here. All right. So okay. So what can you do to feel better physically? Okay. So we got the Seven of Swords. So I think maybe this might be, you have to think outside of the box of what people have been telling you to do. So maybe you're being told like rest, don't move, try, or the opposite, like try and make movements. But think about all the advice you've gotten and what could be the opposite of that? What could be a different way of viewing it, of kind of going against the grain of what society or like these well-intentioned advice are suggesting to you. So maybe try and flip things around and not necessarily be sneaky, but just like approach this uncomfortable physical feeling from a different angle and see if you can find a new way to escape of it that's different from the usual advice. So it's a little food for thought there.
Nice, very cool. Very cool. Adriana's asking, I would like to know about my professional path.
Okay. See. All right. Somehow let me know when to stop. Not sure how to know.
I'll let you know. I'll keep now.
Okay, now. Perfect. Okay. So professional path. So we got the Justice card and it's reversed. So maybe it's about like finding a balance within you of what you want, like what is it that you want to achieve personally, what are your goals, what are your aspirations, your passion, and how can you apply that professionally. So think, instead of thinking very specifically like, oh, should I sell clothes, should I do this, should I like become a doctor, think about like, okay, my goal, is it to help people, is it to do this, is it to do that. So once you find that, find a way to find a balance between achieving what makes your heart happy and what can make your how can you make money out of that too, and like finding this balance between those two, and kind of it starts on the inside. So it's going to be, to find this professional path, you need to maybe first look inward to then be able to apply that outward. That's what I see there. It'll click the reading.
Nice. Very cool. I was going to take the next one to give you a break, but I
Yeah.
feel like this one is totally, I can do the next one. We could, I feel like this one's totally in your wheelhouse. Mars is asking, what do I need to know about my academic direction post-bachelor's?
Okay, I'll take this one and then you take the next one and then we'll go from here. Okay, hold on. Let's see. So it's about the academic direction.
He said, they said, what do I need to know about my academic direction? They said, post-bachelor's in parentheses.
All right. Okay, so just let me know when to stop, Mars.
And stop.
Cool. All righty. So academic direction. Okay, so we have the Two of Pentacles. So I would say that you might be torn with some possible ideas, and maybe it's about remembering that any path you take will lead you to where you want to go, because there's this infinity sign, this loop, this connecting. So while you are balancing two possible realities of where to go, maybe take the pressure off, because both of those paths will take you to where you actually want to go. So instead of viewing it as like, I need to go this way or that way, kind of view it as like, okay, well, I have these two paths. They're both going to get me to where I want to go. So which one am I drawn more towards right now? And then go with that path now. And then if it starts feeling uncomfortable and not right, you can always switch back. And just remember this notion of like the infinity, the looping of it. So that's it. Off to you, Joe.
All right, Anastasia, I would like to know about the next bit of shadow work that I need to accomplish, as I am scared to start my new work from home venture that's approved, but I have imposter syndrome and don't feel worthy. Okay, Anastasia, you are not alone. I've experienced that. I'm sure many people here have experienced that. So let's look into that. I booked the 1,000 emergency with my hands upon these consecrated cards of life. They're in technology. All right, so Anastasia, I am getting this 8 of Swords. So there's two things here. The general thing is this is expressing the question itself, the imposter syndrome, the doubt, the kind of blocks, the kind of mental things that we all have that get in our way. Now, what is that specifically? What are some actionable steps you can take? I'm gonna recommend letting go of attachment to detail and anything that's arbitrary, anything where you're thinking about like, oh, well, what color should the curtains be? And if it's that color, then what kind of chair should this be? And what's the business model? And what's the name? And so be careful about the details. They'll kind of slow you down. The vision that you have, the broad vision, is the energy, and the energy is what you want to follow. And when you follow the energy, you'll naturally make the choices without kind of putting in the effort of trying to be right. Right. So I'll give you a tool you can use is every day ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be free? Right. And have more fun with that. Aileen is asking, hi, I'd like to know what's up with this guy I'm connected, that I've tried all possible ways to cut cords and it's not working. Could it be there's still something I need to do with him? That's a great question. Fun, interesting stuff. I'm going to tell you two things. I'm going to give you an answer, and then I'm going to tell you something you might not want to hear. Okay. So Aline, I have the Hierophant here. So this is telling me a number of possibilities. Either in some way, this person is bringing you some level of structure or comfort that you consciously or unconsciously enjoy, or you are providing that comfort to them because you want to help them in some way, this person. I would say cord cutting. The thing that you might not want to love to hear is if they're still in your life, if they're really still in your life and you can't get rid of them, that they have some sort of benefit to you, that you're kind of keeping them around subconsciously or not. And it's okay. And I want you to know it's okay to keep someone in your life. So ask yourself, what's the benefit of this person? What am I learning? What awareness do I have in this relationship and of myself? You know, because then allow yourself to choose the person so that you could let go of any shame, blame, guilt, or judgment about choosing this person. There's no wrongness in the situation, right? Whatever they provided to you was helpful, and whatever you provided to them was helpful. When you can allow that and let go of whatever society thinks about the connection, then you can kind of like move on and more easily. You know, there's a little bit of self forgiveness in that as well. Owner, is my relationship with my brother going to improve? Two of Cups. Probably yes, probably soon. Yeah, it's just about like getting on, like, you know, recognizing each other's feelings, and it's not going to be a big conversation. It's going to be a moment of like, oh, I see what you meant by that, or I see what you've been feeling, and I got you, and we'll just kind of, you know, it's going to be a very like non-emotional moment, but also kind of emotional moment. Yeah. Do you want to do any more readings, Veronica, or would you like to get started?
Oh, we can get started, and then the question we didn't get to, we can get to them at the end. So we have, I think, like 3 other questions. So we can, once we wrap up, we'll come back to them and we'll answer them together. So
Awesome. Sounds
you guys
great.
didn't get answers. Stay tuned for your answers soon.
All right, so we're gonna officially start, and I am so excited. Welcome everyone to Magical Storytelling and Tarot, drawing on medieval fictions as modern readers. I am so excited for this. This is something I just have to say, like, you know, when I was like, one of the things that happened to me when I started Tarot Mysticism Academy and doing so much with business, and I work all the time, so I have much less time to learn. You know, I really miss academia. I miss learning. I miss knowledge. And so when I met Veronica, I was so excited because what I knew that she had was two things among many things, but 2 big things. One, she has this beautiful, sexy PhD, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. It's like what I dreamed of having when I was a kid. That's number 1. Number 2, she has all of this knowledge of esoteric history, and it really informs her practice in such cool ways. But number 3, she has intuition and talent as a practitioner. And one of my favorite things to do is to turn academics into practitioners. And it's so fun. And I'm so excited that she's here with us, and she's going to be giving us so much knowledge. So yeah. And, you know, one of the things is, you know, in the spiritual and tarot community, there's so much information everywhere. There's so much stuff. Everyone's got an idea and an opinion, and that's great. You know, there's an abundance and wealth of information, but it's always so comforting and important. And it's just really, really nice to like go back into the scholarship and see, what were these people doing? What were they thinking? What motivated them to work with these symbols and tell these stories and do these practices? It just connects us more with history, you know? And it's very grounding in a way. So I'm really excited that Veronica is here to help us with that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Veronica is a medieval scholar with a PhD in Hispanic literatures and cultures, and has 10 years of experience teaching at the university level. She is also the vice president of the Societas Magica, an academic group dedicated to the study of magic. She thrives to channel the Tower card, the Tower Tarot card, using her expertise to revolutionize the social impact humanities can have on personal development and mystical exploration. She is committed to unlocking the transformative power of the past and its relevance to contemporary spiritual practices like tarot, which she highlights in her new public humanities project on Instagram, Medieval Magic for the Modern Mystic. Very, very cool. So I'm going to link quickly. I'm going to just add the link to oops, let me just go to, so I'm going to link her Instagram in the chat, and I'm also going to link a place where we can do that later, but that's her Instagram. I'll also throw the link if you want to book her for a reading. And yeah, I'm going to give it up to Veronica.
Yay, thank you so much, Joe. I love what you had to say. It was really touching. I appreciate it so much. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. Can you all see my screen? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So hold on, let me get all situated so I can see my notes. Okay. So thank you all for being here today, especially on this Taurus lunar eclipse in Scorpio season. So I think it's like a great time to kind of dive into the beauty of magic and the unknown and the secretive nature of things. And what a great time to do that. So Joe gave an introduction of who I am. So I wanted to kind of outline who I am through the cards. So I'm an Aquarius, so that's associated with the star sign. And coincidentally, I was born on the 17th, and the star is number 17. So obviously, I find it, I like this connection. It's coincidental, but I think it's pretty cool. So the star is all about this hope, purpose, growth, also expressing vulnerability and willingness to go beyond the layers and kind of explore like deeper things. And specifically, I'm part of the third decan of Aquarius. So that's associated with the Seven of Swords. And I really like this card, even though like normally it's connected to like being sneaky and getting away with things. It's also the way that I like reading this card is going against the grain. And like Joe highlights this too in his classes. So that's why I love, like, we have like similar ways of seeing some of the cards. So that's cool. But like, you know, he's all about like going against what society normally might say. So I'm trying to lean more into this sometimes. So this is an aspect of myself that I'm like exploring a bit more, and it's connected to my sun sign. So my moon is Scorpio, and Scorpio is connected to the death card. And that's all about transformation, transitions, embracing new opportunities, and like being really motivated by like deep, profound conversations. So maybe that has something to do with my interest in magic, maybe not, I don't know. And my ascendant, my rising is Cancer. So it's just a Chariot card, and it's all about like this control, willpower, but like balancing of things and like determination and going forward and finding like your purpose and bringing out what's inside to the outside. So I think that kind of gives you like a little bit of an idea of who I am by using the cards. And I really love the Page of Pentacles because he's all about learning, and like he's so admirative of that pentacle of like knowledge, of like seeking out truth, of learning, of always acquiring more. And it's telling that I really like this card because the Page of Pentacles is associated with all the earth signs, and I do have a Capricorn stellium, so maybe that's, I mean, obviously I'm like reading into these things, but I think it's just a cool way to kind of give you a little bit more context about who I am as a person. So, oh, I'm not doing the play. Hold on. There we go. And so a bit of my story. So I'm a first generation Latina American. I was born in Michigan to Argentine immigrant parents who met in France. So all over the place. And I grew up loving Harry Potter and Charmed. I watched them growing up a lot. I read them. I went to like all the book launches, waited till midnight, got my book and read it. So I was like always really into magic. And it wasn't until college that I started thinking like, wait, I could study this. This would be a thing. So then that led me into my academic career. But so during grad school, I would get my cards read a lot. I was really curious about it. And then by 2018, I started learning how to read them myself. I started reading more books, watching more YouTube videos, taking some classes. And then ultimately, that led me to Joe and his Tarot Mysticism Academy. And I'm so excited I'm there because he's really helped me like level up my knowledge and like keep finding more places where I can go to keep learning more, because the more you know something, the more you realize there's so much more to know about it. And I love that. So as you mentioned, I have a PhD in Hispanic Literatures and Cultures. I'm the vice president of Societas Magica, which is an academic group for the study of magic. And my research primarily focuses on the pre-modern socio-religious and multilingual cultural contact. And I do that mostly via food or magic. And the way that I do that is usually anchored in the past, but sometimes I'll even bring it into the future with more, or the present with more like medievalisms. And I have published multiple articles, and I have a book that also focuses on magic. And what I'm doing right now with my Instagram is kind of revisiting the topics that I've written about or that I've taught, but looking at them through a lens of tarot and astrology. So if you can, give it a follow so you can see more things about it. But without further ado, I want to give you an outline of what we're doing here today. So I'm giving you a very brief introduction to this material, and very similar to how Joe's class is like, oh, like I could go on for hours on this topic. Like I definitely feel that. So many of these slides could be a whole class themselves. So I'm just giving you the smallest sampling, and there's much that I don't even touch, but just kind of like give you a little sampling of it. And they also keep note that most of the pictures I use, I just got them from Google, so I don't own them per se. Part one, we're going to talk about context and history. So I'll talk about tarot and playing cards in general, what is pre-modern Spain, and the importance of stars and magic. Part two is where we look into magic in medieval fiction, and I pair that with some tarot cards. And then part three, I have a closing 2-card sample reading for the collective with a Q&A, and then we'll do a bit more readings from you guys that with questions that you have. So tarot before tarot. So these cards mostly they came from the Islamic world. They entered Europe through Italy, but also through Spain, through the Mamluk playing cards, and they became really popular around the 14th century. So here you see the Mamluk cards, and they have like the 4 pips. And then what we do know for sure is that in the late 14th and early 15th century in Catalonia, in the Iberian Peninsula, there were Moorish-styled cards that were being produced. So the Spanish cards very closely resemble the Italian cards, and they have 4 suits. They're the bastos or the clubs. See.
Sorry, we're still seeing the first slide. Did you want to move to the second slide?
Oh, it's not moving?
Yeah, we're still on as told by the cards.
That's weird. Hold on. Okay. Thank you for interrupting. Let me know.
Sorry about that. Thank you,
Okay.
Tracy, for sharing with us. Cool. There we are.
Okay.
Now we just saw it move from one slide to another.
Oh no. Okay. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Okay. So
that is all good. These happen all the time.
Okay,
but
so you can see this, right?
Yep.
But if I put play, do you see the next one or no?
No, we're still on outline and disclaimer, but just a few seconds ago, it took up the whole screen and I saw it move from one slide to another.
Okay, so I'm going to do it like this then.
Okay, now it says tarot before tarot.
Wait, okay, so we missed some pictures. So these were the pictures I had here. This is my disclaimer page. Now we're back to tarot before tarot, and here we have the pip cards. Okay, so doing this way, there's going to be some slides that are going to be a little bit wonky, but well, I'll play with it. So anyway, so the Spanish cards are very similar to the Italian cards, and they have the bastos or the clubs, oros, the gold coins, copas for cups, and espadas for swords. So this is an old one from Toledo. So you can see like it has like this very similar to like the Italian cards, and like we can see kind of like influences of like, you know, more about tarot, like the Marseille cards and the ones that have like the unillustrated pips. So there you can see the similarities. But again, originally tarot was a card game. It was Italian carucci. And it wasn't until the 18th century that these cards got to have more divinatory uses in cartomancy. And in the 19th to 20th century, the Hermetic Order, the Golden Dawn, played a key role in giving these cards esoteric connections in the development of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and the Thoth deck, and like how we view tarot today. So let me see if this will work. Hold on. Okay. So here we have cards in Spanish America. So here we have just traditional Spanish card deck, and here we have loteria. So loteria essentially is kind of Mexican bingo, but a bit, I think, more fun and more complex, and has 54 cards. And like the way that you traditionally play, you have like a board, and each one has a different, and then like someone will call out the cards by shuffling them and call them out, and then you have to get the loteria, the bingo, to call it out. But if you'll notice, there are many of these cards that are similar to like the major arcana. So we have the moon, right? The sun, the devil, the world card, the star. So there's curious parallels, not of course with all of them, but there are many connections. And these cards came in to Mexico in the 18th century, well, to New Spain, right? From Spain. And then we also have the traditional Spanish cards, which can be 40 to 50 cards, and they were starting to be exported in the 16th century. And they are still used today for like trick-taking games, fishing, draw and discard games. And one of the more famous games, one that I'm familiar with is the Argentine truco. So it's a tricky game. It has a lot of rules. I'm not very good at it, to be honest, but it's fascinating. People that are good at it, it's like, I don't know, it's really cool. But what they take out the 8 and the 9s and the 2 jokers. So they have 40 cards, and then each card has different values. And curiously, the 4 of cups is the one that has the lowest value. And there's this saying in Argentina, among people that play truco, they say that something is a un 4 de copas, of someone or something is a 4 of cups. So you're kind of insinuating that they're insignificant, they're not important, they're not good. And I'm not saying there's a connection with truco and tarot, but it's interesting that in tarot, the 4 of cups has, the Golden Dawn has the title of like the Lord of Blended Pleasure, so kind of like dissatisfaction. So there is this kind of connection between those 2 concepts. So I think that's really cool. And before we get more into the past, I just wanted to bring up more contemporary credit that's given to tarot and brujeria in Argentina. So last year, Argentina won the World Cup, see? There has been credited, there's articles in Spanish newspapers and the New York Times talking about like this army of witches from Argentina who relied on crystals, tarot, astrology to kind of protect Messi. And I just think it's like an interesting contemporary shout out to like these practices. So that said, let's travel back to the past. So some important dates to know about is in 711, Tariq led from North Africa across Gibraltar into the peninsula, and he led his armies, and this was the start of Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain. And then just a few years later, in probably around 718, the Reconquista began, and I put it in quotations because it's a term I don't really like, because it's implying that they're reconquering something that belonged to them, and that's very tricky, and I don't agree with it, but like the people recognize the term Reconquista. So here, this is Al-Andalus at its height. So it had control of all of modern day Portugal, most of Spain, even a bit of southern France. And then eventually Christian territory started coming in, and there was conflict and fighting, and it kept going on. But the thing to remember is, even though this Reconquista and like conflict between Christian forces and Muslim forces was going on up until 1492, the boundaries were constantly changing. And it wasn't just the Christians and the Muslims, right? Because there was many different factions of each in different Taifa kingdoms and different Christian kingdoms, and it was very complex. And then one other date I want to just mention is 1609 to 1614 was the expulsion of the Moriscos. So Moriscos were, for the most part, crypto-Muslim new Christians, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit. So given these dates, we know that there was conflict. But the thing is, where there's conflict, there's also contact. And where there's contact, there's possibility for coexistence, occasionally, of course, and collaborations. And sometimes this coexistence is, especially among scholars, the way that it's been viewed now as like a notion of convenience. But regardless, there was this exchange among communities, among ideas. So in Al-Andalus, especially, there was and then even in the Christian territories later in the peninsula, there's a lot of scientific and philosophical advancement in math, medicine, astronomy, pharmacology, magic, and so much more. And this really fun fact that I like, so in the 10th century Palace Library of Cordoba, there were more than 400,000 books. And just for context, at the same time, most European libraries didn't exceed 100, not 100,000, but just 100. So you can imagine the amount of knowledge that was just like there for the taking and like expanding. It didn't matter where this information came from. What mattered was that it was knowledge, and they were taking it and digesting it and integrating it. And it didn't matter if it was Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or anything in between. They were just absorbing all the information and trying to gain more and more of it. So very Page of Pentacles, see? So within Al-Andalus, and this is of course what's happening in other areas of the Islamic world. So like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad and all these other places where translations were happening, but this was also occurring in Al-Andalus, and they were taking books from Baghdad and bringing them back to Al-Andalus. There was these translation efforts from ancient Greek into Arabic, but also Hebrew. And this material was very Neoplatonic, and it was now being put into a monotheistic framework. So those in the audience that have taken courses with Joe, you know that one of his favorite philosophers is Plotinus. So Plotinus is the one who started this Neoplatonic movement, where of course he's taking ideas from Plato, but also incorporating some from Aristotle as well. So the Neoplatonic concept. And then we see that in these Arabic texts, and that's how they then later came into Europe. And then within the Spanish territories, we have Arabic and Hebrew being translated into Spanish and Latin. So it started off being just into Latin, then into Spanish, and this was in the Christian territories, and it started around the 12th century. So another thing to keep in mind is that during this time period, the Iberian Peninsula was a hub for so much magical knowledge of mysticism, Kabbalah, Sufism. So starting in the 9th or 10th centuries, we have the birth of Andalusi Sufism with Ibn Masarra, and then with his a later disciple, Ibn Arabi, in the 12th and 13th centuries. And Ibn Arabi has so many texts, and he's a fascinating character. And he was the one that began the notion of the Wajat al-Wujud, or the unity of being. So it's this very beautiful Sufi philosophy of being able to, through contemplation and observation of nature, you can reconnect with God. And during the same time, there was a surgence of Kabbalah, and it resurfaced in the 12th and 13th centuries among Sephardi communities in Spain and Languedoc with the 12th century Bahir, but also with Moses de Leon's 13th century the Zohar. And there's also Abraham Abulafia, who's in the 13th century, and he's the one that founded, we have him right here, he founded the school of prophetic or ecstatic Kabbalah, which differs from practical Kabbalah. So he was less interested in the Sefirot and more interested, again, in this notion of being able to connect directly with God. And there are many other different names of important people too. So even Tufail in the 12th century, he wrote this beautiful text that I'm going to talk about hopefully next month on my Instagram page. It's titled Hay Ibn Yaksan, or Alive, Son of Awake. And it's this beautiful story about a young boy who, after losing his mother, goes into like a spiritual quest to understand what the cosmos is, what we are, and what is creation. And it's fascinating. There's also Moses Maimonides. He was a very famous Jewish philosopher who was in Spain, right? And he was writing in Arabic, but using Hebrew script. And he wasn't pro-magic. He thought he condemned it, didn't believe in the superstitious, but at the same time, he was very much into this notion of uniting with God and contemplation. So this idea that terms are wishy-washy and like it depends what you call them, we'll come back to that. But so he was against magic, but very much into the more mystical, even though he was very rationalist. We also have even Rush, Averroes, and later we have some Christian mystics like Juan de la Cruz in the 16th century, Teresa de Avila, and they wrote these awesome mystic love poetry where it describes like a lover going and seeking out his beloved. And while it's on paper, if you look at it, it's just like two lovers. It's really a metaphor for a human soul seeking out the creation. So we see these like more connection with religion and these ideas connected to magic, and we'll see how that's kind of they intersect a lot. So I wanted to talk about Alfonso X. So Alfonso X, he's 13th century king of Castile, Leon, and Galicia. And his nicknames among them were El Sabio, or the wise, but he's also sometimes referred to as El Astrólogo, or the astrologer. And if you look at the moon, there's one crater called the Alfonso's crater, and it's named after him because he was so into astrology and astromagic and knowledge. And for me, he feels very much like the King of Swords. He's very, very, very into like intellect, learning, discerning. He was also this like noble king. There were problems with him too, but like there's a lot of really cool things that he did. And in his court, he hired Christians, Muslims, and Jews to hold important positions, and he helped foster a lot of higher learning with so many translations and commissions on magic, astrology, astronomy, music, games, miracles, wisdom, literature, law. And he was very into making Spanish or Castilian hold this high esteem as a learned language. So again, this kind of ties into this notion of like the sword kind of cutting edges, and how he wanted to distinguish Spanish and not Latin as like this learned language, but Spanish. So one of the texts that he did was a Libro de Juego. So it's a Spanish translation. It was finished in Toledo in 1283. And it's a compilation of many Arabic texts on chess, dice, and table games. And I mentioned this because remember that tarot originally was viewed as a game. So while he doesn't talk about card games here, there is this one table game that pulls on astronomy, astrology, allegory, and metaphysical lessons. And it's right here, and it uses concepts of like the celestial connection. So there's this notion that even within things that were meant to be amusing, there was always this fascination with the stars. So the idea is that they were very into understanding and trying to work out what was going on with the world by looking at the stars. The stars had the answer. And among other tarot cards, we see the prevalence of stars in these. So of course, the star card, but also the chariot with the stars up here above the chariot itself. And then even with the Empress, with the 12 zodiacs up here with the stars. So the way that it's important to remember the cosmology of how people viewed the world at this time. So it was very Ptolemaic and Neoplatonic. So what this means is that Earth was the center, and Earth was the only place that had the 4 elements. So earth, fire, water, air. And then we have the moon, and the moon functioned as an intermediary between the other planets and Earth. So then after the moon, we have Mercury, Venus, Sun, because remember back then, like the notion of planet, it was not how we consider planets now, but more so just celestial bodies. Then Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then we have the zodiac around it, and they all influence each other in this like connecting spheres. And so among that was also the idea that there was this creator, this God that created things. So depending on which lens you're looking at, we have the notion of, so humans were created from earth, then angels were created from light, and then in the Islamic tradition we have jinn that were created from fire. So, and keep in mind that jinn, while invisible normally to our eye, they exist along with us, and they can be believers or non-believers. They can be religious or not, good or bad. And oftentimes they were invoked in magical practices for assistance because they were more connected with magic. And then within the Christian tradition, we have the angels and the devils being fallen angels. So just a little bit of like how the cosmology was. And at this time, all of these entities were believed to be very real and very involved in what was going on Earth. So it was important to know about them, and especially to know about the stars and the planets and what was happening. So I want to give you some examples of that. So in the 12th century, there was a Toledan translation of Tabet ibn Curas de Imaginibus, which is a text on astral magic, and it was translated into Latin by Gerard de Cremona from a 9th century Arabic original. And in its preface, it tells us that knowledge and wisdom are without light when astrology is absent, and that the science of images is the highest and most valuable astrology. So elevating the knowledge of astrology and knowing how to manipulate them to our benefit. And there's also the Lapidario. So this is a Spanish Toledan translation of the original Arabic text compiled in the 13th century. This is in Alfonso's court, and pulling on different zodiac signs, understanding them, but then the relation with precious stones and how they influence in these connections. So again, it's like the material world being connected to the celestial world. We also have the very famous Cicatrix. So it's a 13th century Latin/Spanish Toledan translation. So it was first translated into Spanish, then into Latin, but the Spanish is unfortunately mostly lost, but the Latin survived and spread all throughout Europe, and it's one of the most known magical texts. And it was translated by Yahuda ben Mosh, and it's derived from Al-Qurtubi's 10th century Arabic original Gayet al-Hakim, and this original Arabic text was composed in Al-Andalus in Spain. So what it talks about at the beginning is that the whole purpose of this text is to reveal the highways and byways of the science and to give voice to everything the wise have said about this science and reveal all that they have hidden in their books. And it's one except through wisdom and the study of sciences. So we have this emphasis on study, of being hidden, and again of science, like magic. It was very much a science. They call it science. So It was something that had to be learned, had to be masticado, had to be chewed on and like thought through to kind of be able to then have all this theoretical knowledge to even begin to kind of apply it and have some impact on the world. So that's just the briefest of introductions of the importance of the stars and how we see it showing up. So what I want to do, let's see if the word. Here we go. So magic in modern visual culture. So these are just some modern examples of how we see magic showing up today. So of course we have my beloved Harry Potter and Charmed, the remake, we have The Witcher, The Magicians, Discovery of Witches, which I love. She's a young blonde academic who spends her time looking at manuscripts and like a bunch of other adventures too. But like that little bit, I was like, oh, I love that. And then Merlin, Sabrina, Lucifer, but we also have other stories and representations in different languages. So we have an Italian, The Astrological Guide of Broken Hearts, which is lovely. It's set in modern day Rome and like applying the stars and like how to understand your zodiac sign. And it's really fun. Then we have a more pre-modern one set, Luna Negra. We have this wonderful Spanish story film, Pan's Labyrinth, is set in Franco's Spain. We have the Arabic Jinn show that takes place in Petra. We have this Basque story about the witch trials and Aquilare, or like the sister coven. It's very dark. To be honest, I couldn't finish it because it stressed me out, but like it's well done from what I read about it. And like it, then we also have a modern story of a young woman who moved from Barcelona to a small town where her family was from, and she learns that her grandma used to read tarot and help people using herbs. She kind of like falls into that role. And then we have Siempre Bruja that takes place in modern and colonial Colombia. So just very quickly, and I haven't looked at the chat yet, so I see there's comments, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to ask you guys, what else do you think of? What comes to mind when you think of magic? And you just share it quickly in the chat, and then I'll keep going. But just like to kind of brainstorm on where else we think of magic. Ooh, cats. Yes, I love that. Nature. Yes, absolutely. Like this connection to understanding what's going, rituals. Perfect. Yeah. Mythology. Oh, absolutely. So there's all these beautiful baking. Oh, yeah, I love it. And as I mentioned, like that, I do food and magic. So like that connection is always really fun. Merlin. Yeah, of course. Oh, I love it. Yeah, great. Thank you guys. Absolutely. So all these notions of connecting with nature, connecting with rituals, elements, all these different things, we see it everywhere. So how did the pre-modern mind conceive of magic? So they divided it into three major categories. Like there's exceptions, of course, but in general, you can divide magic from the pre-modern thought into three basic categories. There's benevolent or natural and sympathetic magic. There's the theurgical or divine magic, and there's the maleficent or demonic magic. And the way this can show up is in recipes, written talismans, worn amulets, celestial manipulation, spiritual channeling, oral incantations, fumigations, filters and potions, using the 99 sacred names of God, magical squares, letterism, and so much more. And what this makes me think of is, among other cards, right, is these three from tarot. So the magician is all about manifesting, controlling the elements, using all of them. He has all three of them here, or four of them here. He has a connection of the above and below, which is very hermetic, which is showing up in a lot of the theoretical texts that we were talking about earlier, and like how to manipulate your environment, the nature, to have a real impact in your world. Then we have the high priestess, who does something very similar, but in the spiritual world. So as we saw with like mysticism, Sufism, and Kabbalah, it's all about this like spiritual connection to what is beyond us. And there the high priestess comes in. And then there's the notion of the moon being this intermediary, this moon being revealing the hidden, this evolution, these connections. So these are some ways that tarot can kind of inform how pre-modern minds thought of magic and where it showed up. So something else that's key here is that magic back then was very much real, and it wasn't always called magic. And I like using magic very broadly. And so famously, Richard Kiekhaefer wrote in his Magic in the Middle Ages, he wrote that magic is a crossing point where religion converges with science. Popular beliefs intersect with those of educated classes, and the convections of fiction meet with the realities of daily life. So it's this crossroads, it's this place in between. And I think maybe that's why I love studying magic so much, because I'm very comfortable in the liminal spaces, in the borders between this and that. And that's where magic thrives. And that's, I think, partly why magic is never fully controlled despite constant persecution. There are examples of that too, but like it always keeps surviving, it keeps resurfacing, and why like we're always so fascinated by it. So another thing to keep in mind is that within the pre-modern thought, if you were going to test magic to see if it was going to work or not, and it didn't work, this didn't mean that magic didn't exist. It meant that you did it wrong. There is no way of proving that magic wasn't real. It just meant that you were a bad practitioner. Maybe you didn't do it under the right celestial conditions. Maybe you weren't believing it. There's also this big notion of intent that we're going to get to. But power also played this giant role. So who had access to magic? Was it considered good or bad? Were you respected, or were you a charlatan? So it depends. And the answer to these questions varied even among the same people. So that's why I think of the Hierophant, right? So it's, again, this institutional power tradition, unlocking of mysteries, but also this notion of mentorship, of being let into this secret world and like learning these things. So the Hierophant kind of plays these both roles. And something that the way that contemporaneous people viewed magic, it ultimately boiled down to the intent. And that's kind of how you answered it. So for example, within the Islamic tradition, we have the 10th century Rasal Ikhwana Safa, or the Epistles of the Brethren of Purity, which is a very long text that actually circulated in Al-Andalus. And there's a section where it talks about magic, and it distinguishes between licit and illicit magic. But ultimately, it boils down to the intent of the practitioner, and that's what makes it good or bad. And then in Alfonso X's 13th century, La Siete Partidas, or the 7 parts, which is the legal text, he has a section on nigromancia, or necromancy, but not the necromancy of like raising the dead, but more the necromancy of kind of like dark magic. And he categorizes it as like the strange art of calling up evil spirits that result in harm. It's very wicked and forbidden. However, if this art is used for anything else with good intentions, like removing demonic possession, reconciling husbands and wives, controlling ominous weather, helping crops, then this practitioner cannot be punished, but we should in fact reward them. So it's not the art itself. There's also the I'm blanking right now on which text it is, but in one of the prologues of a medieval grimoire or spell book, it compares magic to a hammer. Hammer in itself is not something that's dangerous. It can be used to build a house or to murder someone, but the hammer is not the problem. So magic's not the problem, it's the person using it. So that's what determines whether it's good or bad. And this is kind of picked up again with Ibn Khaldun's 14th century. He's a Tunisian author. He also traveled through Iberia. He wrote the Muqaddimah, or the introduction, and he distinguishes between miracles and magic, saying that magic is only done by evil people for evil action, whereas miracles are good people for good purposes. So there's this connection to intent happening here. And then, hold on, we also have Morisco magic. So Morisco magic, here's more like 16th century magic by these mostly crypto Muslims. So Moriscos, they were the name given to those that were descendants of the Muslims of Spain who converted to Christianity. They were called New Christians, Moriscos. Many of them were genuinely Christian, and they were happy with their new faith, and they adopted all of these different things, and their generations in. But there was also a good chunk of them who were still secretly Muslim in their hearts, in their homes, and even if they were a few generations in. So a lot of them, they didn't have great Arabic, but they had some, depending on where, right? But there's a lot of magical texts written by Moriscos. And unlike the earlier magical texts, these had much less focus on the theoretical or the prerequisite astrological knowledge. And they were very much more practical and rural, and they didn't know many things. They just cared that it worked, and they compiled things from different sources. And it was mostly theurgical or divine magic, as well as natural or sympathetic magic connected to nature. And there's many texts that are still unedited, but one of the most renowned ones, and one that my research plays with a lot, is called the Libro de Dichos Maravillosos. And it has almost 600 folios, and it's written in Aljamiado. So Aljamiado is, so you see, it looks like Arabic, right? But it's actually, for the most part, it's phonetic Spanish, and sometimes it'll code switch with other languages. But the spells, and you see how big it is. And this text was found inside a structure of a house. So they found it, and then that's how they discovered that this was here, and it was just hidden. So it shows there was something important to them, because there were more and more laws that prevented circulation of anything that was Arabic, looked like Arabic, etc. So they had to keep this hidden, but they still had it. So the spells and recipes in here are meant to solve everyday problems. There's a lot of stuff about toothaches, sleepless babies, loveless marriages, maybe provoking or taming adulterous behaviors, travel protection, memory enhancement, presumed invisibility, which most of them, like, they're kind of creepy. Like, you have to either carry around like the eyes of a bat and with you, or like use bat blood to draw a little thing, and it'll like help you be invisible. And then it's just funny because like it's like, by the way, don't speak, because if you're speaking, you'll give away, you'll be seen. So like, I don't know, it's fun. But there's also other spells about like avoiding death and like general protection and more. But sometimes there's mistakes. And on folio 448, they did this really interesting confusion where they're talking about when it's best to do certain spells. So there is a little bit of theory, but the theory that they put is not perfect. So like they're talking about Gemini, and they write it al-Jawza, right? And then they say right after it, they translate it into Spanish as nuez, or nut. So what happens is that they confuse al-Jawza with Jawza. So this is a very, very understandable mistake for language learners. And maybe many of you here like have experience of like learning a new language, and like there are words that are just a little bit different, but like very, very similar. So this is a very understandable mistake, but if they knew more astrology, they would have picked up on the fact they're not talking about nuts, but actually Gemini. So it's like a curious little mistake here. And then also within this text, there's this one section on divination. So where you use a palico, like a little rectangle, not cube, but like a rectangle, and it has like 4 sides, and it's a makeshift die. And you can either put the numbers 1 through 4, you can put the sacred letters Aleph, Ba, Jim, and Dal, or the 4 elements, fire, air, water, earth. So again, I'm not saying that this is directly connected to tarot in any way, but it's just telling, that tarot within the minor arcana has the 4 suits that are connected to the elements. And then here we have a divinatory practice that relies on the 4 elements. So just a curious little connection there with Morisco magic. And since oftentimes a very popular question that tarot readers get is about love, I wanted to show you one spell from this text. And don't go trying it at home, but just I wanted to show it to you. It's one of my favorites to show because it's short, it's simple, and it kind of encapsulates everything that's I'm trying to show. So this is, while it looks like it would be in Arabic, it's actually mostly in Spanish. It starts right here. So capítulo para amorío. And so it's a love spell. And essentially it's telling you that if you write these sigils, these hawatines onto an apple and give them to someone to eat, they will fall in love with you. Now, it doesn't tell you how to write them. So I'm always assuming that they're just based on other examples within this volume, that they're using water and saffron to kind of paint it on, because I feel that if someone gave an apple that had these symbols carved onto it, I really doubt that you would eat it. So they had to be maybe a bit more sneaky. But one of the cool things I like about this is here we have hawatines. So here, while it's mostly in Spanish, right here, it's taking an Arabic plural term, hawatin, for sigils or seals, and then it adds the Spanish plural es. So it's taking already Arabic plural term and pluralifying it again with a Spanish plural ending. So it's like this combined Spano-Arabic blend. So it's showing that these moriscos, they knew this word, but they like maybe forgot it was plural or like did some weird combination. And like it's fascinating what happens here. But like I also want to mention the notion of apples. And I could go on about this for a long time, so I'm just going to contain myself. But you notice inside apples, there's like almost like a little pentacle here, right? So magical connections, apple, tree of life. We have here in the Lover's card, right? So the tree, the apple here, and then here with the Three of Cups, we have like abundance and celebration, like probably little apples here. So there's some little connection with apples and magic. So this brings us into tarot and storytelling. So for me, I view the cards as like something that tells a story, and the reader is doing kind of a close reading of them and giving different interpretations. And as someone who studies literature, there are so many ways you can interpret any one text. And that's why there's so many ways you can interpret the cards. And it depends on like what you're feeling, that, and in difference to literary texts here, right? There's a lot more reliance on intuition and a feeling of like what you're picking up in the moment, but they're still telling a story. And that's it. And it's also like it's Socratic. It's like the way that I view tarot is, it's not divining your future, but rather helping you realize what you already know deep inside. And that's incredibly Socratic in the way of like teaching someone that they already know something, and they need to, like, through question, through probing, through telling them stories, they realize that they actually have their own answers. And that's the way that I see it. And again, like tarot can also be like this map to the cosmos. And it connects back to this like notion of like how they viewed the world. And I think it's like a really cool connection here. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. And the way that magic shows up in fiction, it can be many ways. So some obvious ones are like love potions and spells, supernatural entities like fairies, demons, different creatures. There's magical rings, enchanted spaces, time-bending tricks, big epic night battles, and so much more. And like here's like a fun little image I found of this guy looking up and thinking about the stars, and like here's a little devil coming at him. So I don't know if that was fun. It's not from Spain, but that was like a cool little visual. So oftentimes when we think of the Middle Ages, we think of knights. Tarot has 4 knights. So, and this kind of informs the way that these characters show up in medieval texts. So full of passion, desire, like willingness to be like, oh yeah, I'm the greatest knight. I'm going to do these things for society, for the greater good, for the virtues, for God, for my king, all this like desire, act now, think later. They're also very emotional, connected to love. So very much devoted to like, oh, I'm doing this for my beloved. I want to honor her above all things, wearing their heart on their sleeves. And sometimes the knights in medieval stories can be more patient, focused on virtue of like waiting things out, of taking a breath, and like this exaltation of virtue. So some examples that we have of knights in medieval Spanish texts, we have the Cantar de Mio Cid. So it has Cid, one of the famous knights who, so this one is like a fictional story, but based on a real knight. Then we have Amadís de Gaula, Libro del Caballero de Sifar, my favorite, Don Quixote. So we have with Amadís, there's this one moment where he's about to fight this giant dragon. He feels that he might die. So he tells his friend / witness, hey, if that happens, please take my heart and give it to Oriana, because she is the sole owner of my heart. And while it's trying to be very romantic and sweet, he's literally talking about like removing his heart and giving it to his beloved. But this kind of speaks to this like Knight of Cups energy, similar to Don Quixote, and like how his whole thing is like motivated by trying to emulate earlier medieval knights like Amadís, who like had to have this like sacred beloved. So for him, it's Dulcinea. We have this connection. So I'm going to talk to you with a few more examples, and then we'll get into some more Q&A. And it turns out I'm very bad at multitasking, so I will look at the chats once I stop, because I feel like I'm going to get frazzled. But thank you. I'm excited to read and hear what you guys are saying. So we have the Two of Wands, and the Two of Wands is often connected with Alexander the Great, and he's a real figure, right? He was the king of ancient Greek kingdom Macedonia. He was tutored by Aristotle, and remember that a lot of Aristotle's philosophies were brought into Neoplatonic thought, which are then translated from Arabic and they're circulating. So there's connection here. Alexander the Great was also very vast with his military conquest, and his legacy depicted in many cultures, and it's still talked about today. So he's a pretty important figure. So in medieval Spain, in the 12th and 13th century, there's this text called the Libro de Alexandre, and it was written in Spanish by an unknown author between the years 1178 and 1250. Survives in 2 manuscripts and 3 fragments. And there's also some Arabic versions, and it has almost 3,000 strophes. It's written in Quadernavia, and I'm in no way suggesting that the Quadernavia has like a more like magical connection, but the way that it's set up is 7 and 7. So 7 syllables, pause, 7 syllables, and 7 is a very important number in tarot as well. So like the major arcana being divided into 3 septenaries. So pointing that similarity out there. And it's a long text, and among them there's some fun magical scenes. So there's a submarine scene, there's some flying griffins, and there's talking prophetic trees that speak to his death. So here's 2 examples, and it's just awesome. So like Alexander the Great, he already had so we know that he's connected with the element of fire. So I showed you the wands card. And then he already had control of earth because he was very expansive. But now there's this moment where he wants to also go into the world of water and like be the king of this area. So he basically invents a submarine, like this glass thing that he like descends, and he's there and he observes all the fish. And he's brought back up and he's like, oh, this is wonderful. I know these things. And it's a way of kind of showing his continued conquering of water. And just note that this is written in the 12th, 13th century, and submarines weren't invented until the 17th century. So it's a really cool thing that's going on here. And then something similar happens a little bit later where he wants to conquer now air. So all the 4 elements are being controlled by Alexandre. And so what he does is he takes, creates like a little like chariot thing, and he has 4 griffins, and he has meat, and he uses the meat to get the griffins to kind of fly and take them around. And so here he's now conquering air. And so this is like this connection with like all the 4 elements. And another, I'll get to the other example with the talking trees. So here are some other cards that kind of show up in my upcoming examples. So we have 2 that have trees. So 4 of cups, and this like dissatisfaction, ambivalence, like I have things, but not feeling it as much. So we'll see that kind of theme come up. We have the Lovers card with like the mixing of elements, and then we have the notion of like the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge, and the tree of life, and then the Sun card, the Moon card, and the Devil. So like this radiant success and like continuing and like connection with the sun, the connection with the mediary of the moon, and then the Devil, so kind of tempting into these more carnal desires. So before we move on to different texts, here we have some examples from the Libro de Alexandre, where he eventually goes to meet with these prophetic trees, and they speak, and they foretell that he's going to die and he's going to be poisoned. And note that Alexander the Great's actual death is kind of contested among scholars, and maybe he was poisoned, maybe not. We don't know. Maybe he died of malaria. But this is how it's represented in this medieval fiction. And you can see in these 2, at least in the Christian versions, the 2 trees have the sun and the moon. So sun and moon. So again, that notion of those luminaries. And then here we have from the Arabic text. So the prophetic trees more so have like different heads on them. And I mean, maybe they could be connected to the zodiac. I'm not sure, but there's different representations here. And then we also have another text going into the 16th century. It's called El Viaje Maravilloso de Buluquia, or the Marvelous Adventure of Buluquia. So this is a magical adventure story with heavy religious undertones, and it's an anonymous adaptation into Al-Hanyado. So again, that mixed, looks like Arabic, but it's mostly phonetic Spanish type of writing that I spoke about, exclusively for a Morisco audience. And this story was originally one of the 1001 Nights. So specifically, it's from the nights 486 and 487. But the story is also found in the Quisas al-Nabiyya, or the stories of the prophets, from the 9th and 10th centuries. And essentially what happens is Bulukia, he discovers this trunk that has like this text that fascinates him, and it foretells the coming of a prophet. This is written before, like it's the stories in the 16th century. So like obviously Islam happened, but the narrative of the story is pre-Islam. So it's foretelling the coming of Islam. And he goes on this adventure. He finds King Solomon's magical ring. He interacts with different jinns and mermaids and other magical creatures. And there's another moment where he interacts with trees that talk. So this is from Lord of the Rings, and makes me think of the Ents, right? But so in this case, these trees that are powered by God, they tell him if they take leaves from the trees and like create a paste and put him on his feet, he can walk on water as if it were land. So again, we see this like connection of being able to control different elements, of using trees in new ways, connection with Solomon and Jinn, and different notions like that. So thinking back to like the high priestess and like the two pillars behind her, there are the pillars from King Solomon. So we have those possible connections there. Another story that we have comes from the 14th century, and it's from the Libro de Captura Sifar. So specifically, this is an isolated story that tells about the Bold Knight, and it occurs about halfway through the story in the second book. And the way that this book, the whole Libro de Captura Sifar, is collected, it's very didactic. It has a lot of chivalric adventures, and it's hagiographic, so kind of like emphasizing the importance of saints and like virtues of like, Christian thought here, but there are some interesting overlaps. So this is one of the two stories that are more magical. So essentially we have this bold knight who's here on this lake, and he encounters this beautiful maiden, but little devil horns here, so we'll see. And she invites him to join him in her kingdom, this underwater kingdom. They go down, they get married, they have this beautiful celebration with a bunch of precious stones, everyone's happy. They weirdly don't talk to him. She says it's normal because here they have to go many like 7 weeks without talking to their new master. It's normal, don't worry. But then some of the entertainment is like these people that are climbing up the rays of the sun. So there's these possible connections with Al-Kindi's Deradi notion of celestial rays. So Al-Kindi, he wrote this note. It's connected to the cosmology of how they viewed Earth and the planets, and how the moon mediated them, and how essentially we're getting all these different rays from the planets onto us, and it's on us to kind of discover how to harness them to our benefit. And so it's curious that in her world, there's people that kind of climb sun rays. So anyway, she says, like, you can be happy you have this kingdom, you'll be the new leader, the new sovereign. There's one condition: you can't talk to other people, especially women, and you can't sleep with anyone but me. It's like, all right, it's fine. And then there's also things happen very quickly here. So they have a son, and within 7 days he's born, and 7 days later he's an adult. And so they go on an adventure, and he sees a woman, and he thinks she's very beautiful, so he lays with her. And then the mistress of treachery, so his wife, finds out, she's unhappy, and she expels them from the land. And they were riding 2 beautiful horses, and turns out that they were actually a pig and a goat. So it's kind of like emphasizing like the notion of being tempted by the devil. She reveals herself to be like this demonic creature. And and then but things aren't always what they seem, and so they're expelled. And then another 2 cards that kind of play up, and here come in my last 2 examples. We have the Magician and the Hierophant. So traveling back in time again to the 13th century, among the many texts that Alfonso X commissioned, he commissioned the Cantiga Santa Maria, which is a collection of 420 poems in Galician Portuguese on the miracles of the Virgin Mary. And some of these miracles are original, some are adaptations from older stories, and some are actual documented miracles. So Cantiga 125 tells the story of a priest here who uses magic via the control of demons to seduce a woman. So he's in church, he sees this beautiful woman, he's like, oh, I must have her. And it's important to note that it's not unusual that this priest know magic, because historically, it was usually people connected with religion that knew more about magic because they were literate. So they had access to these texts, because in order to exorcise demons, they had to know about demons and how to summon them. So he is led astray, summons these demons, manipulate, like he's like mean to them. It's like, you need to help me get this woman, otherwise I'm going to condemn you to be locked in this jar and life will suck for you. And so the demons are kind of scared of him, and they try, it doesn't work. It's like, we'll try again. It ends up working. They're about to be married, but then the Virgin Mary comes, like, what are you guys doing? You are my people. You should not be doing this. It's bad. And then they go, the woman goes into a convent and he becomes a monk. So that's the end. And this story has earlier versions. And the earlier versions, the message is kind of, hey, magic is bad, or it doesn't work. Here, it's magic works, and not that magic is bad, but the magic of the Virgin is better. And since they're already committed to being Christian, they should not be using this magic. So again, comes down to intent. But one of the cool things that I find with the story, so with the Cantiga 125, most of the cantigas are also illustrated. They have these beautiful images. And so this is one of them. And we have the priest here, and notice these like sigils around here. And don't they look similar to these sigils in the Picatrix that was being translated in the same court by the same patron? So there's these connections and similarities between, and this could be speaking as to why the way that magic is viewed here is less condemning of magic itself, and not saying that magic doesn't work or is bad, because they know that it does work and it has some good. It's just he's not using it for the right reasons. So my last example is example 11 from the 14th century. It's part of Don Juan Manuel's El Conde Lucanor, which has many parts, but the first part contains 51 didactic exempla, or short moralizing stories. And many of them are drawn from earlier Arabic or Greek sources like Aesop's fables. And it's important to note that Don Juan Manuel himself was the nephew of Alfonso X. And so this one tells the story of a dean within the Christian hierarchy who's from Santiago, Compostela, and he goes to Toledo to meet with Don Ian, who is this wise sage. He wants to learn from him. So he asks to be trained, and unbeknownst to him and to the reader, the Don Ian accepts to be his tutor. And so one condition, like, since you want to learn the science that I have and you're already within the Christian hierarchy, once if you get promoted, like, can you get a job for my son? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And it's that before they start training, he asks his maid to start preparing the partridges, so a dinner, but not roast them until he says so. So supposedly years go on, and he keeps rising in rank. And each time he's like, okay, so my son, he's like, oh, well, next time I promised my cousin this, and I need to go to my uncle here. And like, he keeps avoiding keeping his promise until he ultimately, this dean, becomes pope. And then he's like, well, what about my son? He's like, well, you're getting on my nerves. I'm going to condemn you for being a necromancer. And like, this is not cool. Like, you need to stop. So then Don Ian's like, I see. I guess I'm going to have these partridges now. So he like announces the eating of the partridges. They travel back in time, but really it was all an illusion. And the dean realizes that he's not worthy student to teach with him. And then Don Ian's like, I can't teach you. You need to leave. And there are many earlier Latin versions kind of speak to this. And the way that the Latin text function is, they're very much highlighting magic is dangerous. Don't go to Toledo. Toledo is where they learn magic. Don't go there. It's bad. But there's an interesting earlier, like 60 years earlier, Hebrew story that's very similar, that also has a time bending trick. And it's about testing the worthiness of students. But in the Hebrew version, there's a student that goes to Egypt to want to learn magic. That's the one science he doesn't know. He wants to find a good teacher. He finds someone, he's not convinced by him, and he does this whole like enchanting story to then come to the conclusion like, oh, you actually do know your stuff. I'm really sorry. Please let me be your teacher. And he's like, all right. Cool. So like different outcomes, but they're both kind of testing the morality of students and like keeping their promise. And the Don Ian's version inspired Jorge Luis Borges, the 20th century Argentine author, to write a very similar story called El Brujo Postergado, or the Wizard Postponed. And Borges was also really into Andalusian Sephardi philosophies. There's these connections here. And so again, we see this notion of like the Pope, the Hierophant, and Doniyan being this mentor, so the Hierophant showing up in two different ways. So that's the content I wanted to bring to you guys. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a very, very quick sample reading based on the core themes of these stories. And then I'm going to look at the comments and then we're going to have a dialogue discussion. So something that came up in many of these texts that I shared with you guys, and there's many more and other things you can pick up on, but what I've noticed is the idea of expansion, exploration, control, and learning. So my two questions, I'm going to pull two cards, is how can we best grow and expand and explore? And what can we learn and avoid from these characters' mistakes? Because sometimes they did commit mistakes, depending on how we're interpreting it. So I just want to do a quick little look at the cards to kind of see how we can use the themes of these literary texts to kind of apply them to today for a more moral story. See? So how can we best grow, expand, and explore? That's interesting. So we have the Four of Cups in reverse. So we saw this card already before, this notion of like blended pleasure, like being satisfied, but not like kind of like in a slump, like, okay, well, things are good, but like, do I keep moving? And like, or are very stable, as Joe has always taught us. So it might be like the best way to expand and explore, we need to move. We can't just stay in our comfort zone, because there comes a point where like comfort is too comfortable and you need to kind of keep going. So the best way to expand and explore is to get up and move. So there's that. And then how can we learn from or avoid mistakes in these characters? So we have the Queen of Wands. So she's like the witch of the tarot, right? So like kind of being connected to our passions, connected to our inner wisdom, this growing, like there's the sunflower, there's a little cat here. So maybe how to learn and avoid characters' mistakes. So maybe just trying to be a bit more humble with what we know, to not like expand so much, like, oh, well, I know everything, I am connected to all this magic, I'm the best. Maybe a bit of humility might be the best answer. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to look at the, oh wait, I want to show you one last slide. If I can get to it. Nope. Here we go. So here's where the QA time, and thank you, but I wanted to show you this fun little, he's my favorite. So I try to summon a demon, but it's really a lemon and it's summoned, and I love it. It's great. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and look at the chats. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Very bad at multitasking. It seems I'm reading.
I have two questions I saved from the chat.
Okay.
There were a lot of great comments and lots of very nice comments throughout in general, but I did save two questions. Do you want to start there?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I have one question. There's two questions on the material and then three divinatory questions for later. But the first question was the Morisco magic and the magical culture onwards a trigger factor for the Inquisition?
Ooh, it's a good question. So the Inquisition was, especially in Spain, it was more interested in heresy and like deviations of, because like the way the Inquisition worked is you had to be Christian for the Inquisition to take you, right? So they couldn't question you if you were Muslim or Jewish, you had to be Christian. So then there was like this push to like have all these new converts, like, oh, now you're Christian, now I can examine you for these things. So magic was a concern, but it was what was more, especially in Spain with the Inquisition, it was more about being a good Christian or not. So like magic played into it, but what they would have been more offended by was that they had stuff written in Arabic as opposed to that they had magic, because like even Christians were condemned of like using magic. So it was like, not to say that magic wasn't a factor. There's a lot of people that were tried in Spain for like being witches or having like dabbling in these things, but it was more concerned about like them like not eating pork or bathing on Fridays and And so like magic played into it, but it was unlike in England, where like it was much more like the witch craze. In Spain, it was much more, we want to be the Christian nation now. So it was very concerned on like if they were deviating from that, as opposed to like if they were doing magic.
Awesome. And then that's so interesting. Another question, I think this was from Shaler. Shaler asks, what, this is actually, oh, this is a reading question. I'm sorry. So there's one question on the material, and then this is kind of like a general reading question. So I guess I'll group that with when we do the readings, but she's asking, what ideas shall we hold close this year as the winter solstice approaches? We can save that if you want to do it for reading. Focus on the material right now.
Yeah.
Looks like Susu has a question. Susu. Hey there. Oh wait, let me try again. Okay, I unmuted you. Now you should be able to unmute.
Oh.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, hi, Joe. Hi, Veronica. Yeah. Nice to meet you, Veronica. Actually, I searched your name last night, and I read your project. Yeah, that's me. You know, I like to read about people before I meet them, and I read your project on Islam, a cult, and which very interesting. I love it. Yeah, and I followed you on Instagram, but I will tell you my question now. But I just want to tell you about what I found about you. Okay. Now you was mentioned about the Arabic text. Actually, I'm Arabic. Okay, I'm native Arabic, so I can read Arabic. Now I try to zoom like a little bit of the text you mentioned, and I tried to read it. I see it looks like Arabic, but it's actually it's not. It's, you know, that it's like the Persian, they type when they like when they writing the same way. So how did you, I'm asking you because you are a researcher, so how did you reach the point that is Arabic? Like you find out that from like certain words, because you are the only one have like have the whole text, you know, the whole material. But like you now you like show us like a one picture, maybe because it was maybe I was not able to see it all, but the one I see here, it doesn't have like a Arabic word. Maybe last night when I checked like your project on Islam a call, no, actually it was mixed. It was like some Arabic words and some not. Even you mentioned that, and I realized the Arabic. Yeah, let me see this. Okay, let me try to read it. Okay.
So like what you're doing is my favorite thing. I love talking to Arabic speakers and showing them Alhamyado when they don't know Spanish, and they're like, "What are you doing? This is not Arabic." I'm like,
no.
The only place you're gonna see Arabic.
No.
I mean, Arabic you'll see here, right, with the Tamat Alhamdulillah, and then you'll have the
where?
So can you see my
maybe not, because your picture it's hide apart. If you can you take the picture to the left a little bit, because yeah, by the I see Alhamdulillah at the lower, but because your picture is hiding part of, let me try to minimize. Yeah, I see here. So
this is the only place to see Arabic on this page.
Okay.
And then here we have Hawatim, but with the Spanish plural ending.
Hawatim. Okay, but listen, that's what when I tell you. Like if we're talking about the Persian, because they are Muslim, they still use the same words. They still use Alhamdulillah. There is some, even the Hebrew, we use some okay, Hebrew letters, they are their letters numbers, they are smaller, less in numbers. Of course, you know about that. So, but they still we have like similar words like hukma, like
Yeah.
it's the same meaning. Listen, it's same meaning, but I think they pronounce it like hukma, but we pronounce it hikmah, but actually it's the same meaning, wisdom.
Right.
Okay, so the Persian, what I want to say is the Persian, they use similar. I don't mean by that I'm saying it's a Persian. No, I just want to tell you, like I'm negotiating with you. It's like they use some similar words in by same exact word, like alhamdulillah. They writing alhamdulillah by the same way, like Arabic. Okay,
Yeah.
but and other similar words as well, but some others it's not. So how did you reach that? Because you have like people similar to me, like from Arabic and from Persian, from these cultures, so you ask them or what?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. Thank you. And so the way like my trajectory with Al-Hamiado text is I first had a class in undergrad on Al-Hamiado and I only knew Spanish at that point. And then I started learning the Arabic alphabet. And then from there, when I went to grad school,
so you understand Arabic now?
Yes, شوية. I have
شوية.
5 years of
يعني
formal Arabic.
أنا لو كلمتك عربي دلوقتي تفهميني؟
نعم
تفهماني؟
أنا أفهم كل هذا ولكن أنا
تتكلمي
أتكلم
فصحى.
أحسن اللغة العربية فقط.
Okay, now you have someone. If you need to know anything, okay, you can ask me. Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Yes. So Arabic is really hard. I love it. It's a beautiful
The
language.
grammar
I've been learning it for like
hard.
I have 5 years of formal training and then like just like researching it on my own. I did a study abroad in Morocco. And so that's like my background with Arabic. And so
but
then
the Moroccans, they don't speak Arabic. You
yeah,
know that.
I know that and it's
They
like a whole other
Barbarian.
Yeah.
It's even for us, I'm Egyptian. It's they don't speak, we don't they speak Barbarian.
Yeah.
Barbarian mixed with the French.
Yep.
Even the people who don't speak French, they speak Barbarian, not Arabic at all. We don't
yeah, exactly. So like all these like fun like linguistic combinations. And it's funny that you mentioned the use of Hebrew. So this Al-Hamiada text that I showed you guys, they're like one of the things I mostly look at is like the Spanish and Arabic combination, but there's also moments where they use Hebrew. And many of you that are taking Joe's classes, you might recognize or like, so the one phrase that's used in Hebrew is "Ahye asher ahye," so I am that I am. That big moment of like going from nothing into something and like the declaration of God, right? And that's the exact same phrase that's being used in Hebrew, written in Arabic letters within this text. So like again, like this like call of like the big thing with like Morisco magic is like they didn't care where it came from. They just cared that it was effective and that it worked. And Moriscos themselves, they knew. Many of them were like native Arabic speakers. Some of them like.
But where is the origin of Morisco magic? It's like where?
From Spain. So it's from this like group of crypto.
Andalus. It's like
and this text that I showed, you can find the entire manuscript digitally online. And like it's like, and there is an edited edition that's translated into Spanish. But
okay. Because Joe, he mentioned you, he will host you like 2 weeks ago, actually. And when I read his email, I was excited because I need to ask you about specific topic. And that's because we, like Joe, he is teaching us this topic right now. I know is Spain, especially Spain, is the center of the Kabbalah. It's like the origin of the Kabbalah. And what I understand about your background, I think you can explain to us about this topic. You can do that, because I know
there's
that
some aspects that I
people
know, but I'm not a Kabbalist, so I'm not like
yeah, because I
expert on
know
Kabbalah, but I do know some of those texts and some of the people I mentioned. So even Arabi, that's more like Sufism, but then like Abu Lafia and like
no,
different.
but
yeah.
listen, I know that people who studied the Kabbalah from Spain, okay, from people in Spain, it's different from any other people studied Kabbalah from any other places, except Israel, of course. But
Yeah.
But Spain, it's like they have very Jewish, well known, like about like the very deep, secretive stuff about the Kabbalah. So at least give us like a knowledge, like a little, as much as you can, why or what's the difference between Spain, like why Spain especially, and what's the difference like between like if we, you understand what I want to say, why Spain?
So Spain was one of the many hubs of magical learning. It was one of the places to be if you wanted to learn stuff about magic, both in fiction but also in reality. There's many like documented people that would travel, especially to Toledo, where Alfonso X was, so that king that I talked about who was like very into translations. He was in Toledo, and so many magical texts were translated there. Kabbalah was rebirthed again in medieval Spain because of all this context. So I talked about how, like, yes, there was constant conflict between Muslims and Christians, and like the Reconquista and the
I
territories.
know.
But like because of all that, there was this like combination and contact with all these cultures, and like sharing of knowledge, and not being like judgy about where it was coming from. They're like, oh, you have a different way of communicating with God, please tell me so we can like join forces and make it this way. And then like there's all these little nuances that they were doing, but like they didn't exist in a vacuum. They were always talking with each other, always learning from each other, and like there was this like birth of collaboration. And that's not to say that they all got along and loved each other, because there was a lot of conflict. But like the reason that Spain is one of these places that like has all this is because remember too, even during Al-Andalus before, like in like the Caliphate of Cordoba, like they had over 400,000 books. So like they were really into just like learning.
It
so
came from
place.
the Muslim, which like Andalus.
Yeah,
it's like Ibn Arabi. You're talking about these books. It came from behind, like the time where the Andalus been in Spain.
Yes, and then also like with the Christians who were then translating all of this Arabic knowledge into Latin and into Spanish.
To Europe.
Yeah. So then out of Spain, then like to the Picatrix, this Gayeta Hakim is one of the most famous spell books of astral magic that was Arabic, and it went out into Europe thanks to the translation efforts in Spain. But like Spain then had this reputation of being like, oh, you want to learn magic? Here's a good place to learn it.
Okay, last question related to the tarot and the Jewish and the Andalus. Okay, I heard before from someone that the Jewish, they keep saying the tarot is related to us, but I heard something say it's like someone he's seeing that the Sufism in Andalus, it's been like especially in this time, the Sufism in Andalus, it was like very shiny, like especially in this century, it was like it was like the most time of like shining of the Sufism, and a lot of Jewish was studying under Arabic Muslim teachers at this time. So that lady, she was explaining that the Jewish was like the studying, like the teaching. Okay, I will explain. Okay, bear with me. So those Jewish, okay, even she mentioned very well known names, but I don't remember. Okay, so she mentioned that those students was like students for Arabic teachers in Andalus, okay, teaching, studying the Sufism, not the Sufism, but studying that knowledge from that knowledge in Andalus at this time, because the Andalus was very shiny. So, and then they took this knowledge and they take it back, especially that like hidden Sufism. And I think you know that the Sufism, it's the same meaning of Kabbalist, like because
Yeah, there's very similar ideas that they
it's
have.
very even it's like a Kabbalist.
There's nuances and like differences, of course, but like this whole connection with
is exactly because there's a lot of Americans, they don't understand that is a Sufism. It's the same meaning of Kabbalist, like because it's in Christianity. There is a Kabbalistic Christianity and Kabbalistic Jewish, and the similar in Islam, it's the Sufism, and all of the three words, it's the same. So they moved with this knowledge to there. So the Taro,
I'm just gonna ask if you, because I just have a list of questions.
No. Okay, this is the last question. So this Taro, it came from. Okay, no, it's the last question. So this Taro, it came from, let's say it came, the start, it was from Andalus. So now I think you know what I mean. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, so like my thing, like, you know, like the Hermetic
it's not from Italy.
So when they like pulled in all these like esoteric signifiers within tarot, a lot of what they were pulling from exists thanks to Al-Andalus. And that was kind of the point I was trying to make. See that this debt that like, especially the esoteric forms of tarot has with all this beautiful philosophy and knowledge and astral magic that was happening within medieval Spain, and among all the traditions and all these like different parallels and how they kind of like work together. And absolutely, as you were saying, there is like similar echoes between Sufism, between Kabbalah, even between Christian mysticism. There's nuances on how like they're also very different. And even among them, they like didn't always agree with certain things, but there is this like cool connection between like some of the concepts and like this connection to like understanding the universe and like where we play into it. So yeah, awesome. And I'm seeing a bunch of messages on things. Thank you. Yep. A lot of people signed out that said good, thank you, but thank you. I see it now.
Does anyone else have any? Thank you so much for those questions, Susu. They were super enlightening, and thank you, Veronica. Those answers were super detailed and fun, and I love hearing about the connections between all these systems. Does anyone have, before we go into the divinatory questions, does anyone else have any questions on the material? All right. No other questions? Cool. Yeah. Well, something very important. Veronica, do you want to share about your practice?
Be more specific.
Well, I'm excited. So Veronica is finally accepting clients.
Yes. Ooh, yeah, my brain was very into like the theory, and I'm like, oh wait, practice. Yes, okay, yeah. So if you want to have a reading with me, I think Joe shared a link. It's also like through my Instagram page, and for today only, I have a discount for a 30-minute reading with me if you'd be interested. So take advantage of that if you can, and if not, absolutely no worries. I'm always happy to just like chat about tarot and love all this stuff. And I like kind of connecting, like using tarot, as I mentioned, as this way of like unleashing what we already know deep inside and kind of helping, like having a dialogue with the querent to kind of figure out what it is they already know. And the cards and I kind of just help you realize how awesome you are. And you just need that reminder sometimes. So yeah. So I know that it's a bit late. So how about we do I think we had 3 divinatory questions, right? That were left over.
Yes, I wrote them down. Let me just check if they're here. I have one for Christina Dorda. I have a question from Matthew, and I have a question from Mari Stellarum, and I have a question from Shaler. So if you guys are here, can you just put in the chat that you're here, and we'll answer your questions. And Okay, so Christina's here, Matthew's here, so let's go into those questions. And Shayla's here. Okay, so
Okay.
Christina is asking the question, how is my career going to look like in the next year?
Okay. All right, let's see. All right, so somehow let me know when you want me to stop, Christina. Stop. Okay. All right. So how will your career look like in the next year? Okay. We got the Tower card. So first of all, don't panic. This is actually a very awesome card. I really like the Tower. It's like, as Joe said in my intro, it's like the card that I kind of use to like channel what I'm trying to do of like rupturing like boundaries, I guess. So I think in applying this to career, I think there's going to be a radical change from what you've been doing to what's going to happen. And it might feel very chaotic and scary and like, oh my God, what is happening? But you need to trust that after the Tower comes a star, and there'll be this like shedding of layers and like, okay, right, I needed to go through this to kind of be able to step forward and make what I want happen. So maybe it's more about like, it's inviting you to reflect on what your goal is and understanding that if that's really what you want, it might take some rupturing of things that you've been doing up until now because it hasn't gotten you the result that you're hoping for. So I advise you to welcome moments of chaos and abrupt change because they might be exactly what you need, even if in the moment they feel very scary. Okay.
Beautiful. And I have Matthew is wait, who's next? I got Christina. Matthew is asking, I am wondering how my new creative venture will be received by others.
Okay. So again, I'm going to ask you, Matthew, to somehow let me know when to stop. Okay. So how they will be received. Okay. So we have the 10 of Cups. This is very promising. I did pull it reverse. So what I think it's kind of, so like the 10 of Cups is all about like this like overflow of completion of happiness, of joy, of like the connecting of the rebirth of new families, of like celebration, of emotional connection, of like relationships. And it's, since it's reversed, I think like I might invite you to rethink your question because you're asking how it will be received. And maybe that's not what you need to be asking, and more so, how are you receiving what you're creating? And putting less emphasis on how others will receive it and putting it more on, does it bring you joy? Does it make you happy? And of that, think of this notion of like children can manifest in many different ways. They can be like you were asking about like creative endeavors. So maybe these children, these things that you're going to give birth to, like they're going to be awesome. And you don't need others to tell you they're awesome for them to be awesome. So maybe just remember that and I'm so guilty of this, but like remember that you don't need to ask how others will receive it for it to be something that's fruitful and positive. So just a reminder for going into this endeavor. Okay. The next one, Shayla, right?
Yep, Shayla is asking, question for communal reading. What ideas shall we hold close this year as the winter solstice approaches?
All right. Ideas to hold close as we enter winter solstice. Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask you again to kind of let me know when you want me to stop. Okay. So what we need to know going in the winter solstice. Okay, so we got the Chariot card. I got it reversed. So I think what I'm getting right now is kind of like the opposite of what winter is all about. It's all about like hibernating and being inside your house and like staying in and being safe. But since we got the Chariot reversed, I'm wondering if it's maybe inviting us to step outside more, to, while yes, hermit a bit in our homes and being nice and cozy and safe, to also seek out moments where we can venture forth and be outside, be connected with other people or nature, or just like enjoying the beauty while like not only staying within the home. So maybe going against the traditional advice of what winter solstice and like this whole idea of winter is about. So maybe just kind of rethinking that question is what I'm getting here from the Chariot. Okay. I think we got two more that came up, right, Joe?
Yep, we have an Anastasia asking if no one else asks any other reading questions. Now I am kind of curious as to how my own home studio shop will go over the next year.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask Anastasia to let me know when you want me to stop. Okay. So, all right. So we got the Four of Swords. So maybe it's the time to maybe even doing a lot of action towards getting the studio shop to take shape, to grow, to manifest. And what you need in order for it to continue to grow is to maybe take a pause and rest and observe and see what's happening. So take a bit of the Four of Swords energy and just like retreat into yourself, into the home, into just letting it be. And then that might give you the spark of idea for how you need to go forth to keep it going. So, and if we're thinking about like what's going to happen for the next year, maybe this next year might be slower than you want it to be, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be something fruitful. So just welcome the slowness and see what can come from that.
Nice. I'll take Aries. Aries is asking, how is my transformation going? The devil. That's so fun. Okay, cool. So, sometimes like we have to like, like when if you're listening to like a DJ, there's like a crossfade between track A and track B. And a lot of times, when we're going into track B, when we're crossfading our life from one kind of song to another, we don't always know, like, you don't know what's constant until it's gone, right? You don't know like what the beat is, like you don't know what sounds are really in a song until it stops. And you're like, oh, like that was a whole like wall of sound as you shift into like a new track. So when you're transforming, sometimes you actually become more aware of what was holding you back after you let it go, right? And sometimes that's kind of the scariest part, because it's like, oh, well, if I don't have that issue, if I don't have that pain, physically, emotionally, whatever, if I don't have that habit, if I don't have that limiting belief, then what am I going to have, right? And you actually lose. And a lot of people are afraid to lose that dark side, that limiting thing, because the uncertainty is even more scary. So I think you're at a stage right now where you're becoming aware of your limitations and you're having the ability to really fully let them go. And I would just trust that letting them go is going to allow something better in. And we have a question. Can I throw? Carla is saying, can I throw a last one? My ascendant is in Taurus. So the 5 DEG, 48 minutes. So the eclipse is hitting me almost directly. What's my next step with this energy? 10 of Swords. So you have a similar reading to the last one, is really just letting things go and like being at peace. Taurans know how to be at peace and being grounded and being connected to sensation and experience. And you have to be grounded with what is right now and kind of getting out of your own head and letting go of like, false identifications, as we all are. But yeah, it's like, maybe there's something physically not with you anymore. Maybe it's someone, maybe it's something, maybe it was a move, maybe it's, I don't know, a different, you're embodying things in different ways. And so it's time to get more comfortable with what's physically there and allowing that new thing to serve you. Yeah. Amy, I'm worried about my dad and his emotions. Is he okay? Magician, yeah. I mean, he's connecting the dots with certain things. He's like, he's on a mission to do something. I don't know if he's like trying to reconnect with you or reconnect family in a new way, or this could also be spiritual work as well. But he's busy. He's definitely busy, but he's okay. And it's good that he's busy, because that means he's active. He's doing stuff, and there's an agility. You know, the faster you go, the harder it is to fall. You know, when you're kind of in the momentum of something. But yeah, you want to take the next one, Veronica?
Sure.
Yannika's asking, what can I expect from my new path, giving workshops instead of courses for next year?
Okay. I'm going to ask you, Yannicka, to tell me when you want me to stop, and then we'll see. Okay. So what can we expect from the next year? Okay, so we have the Nine of Pentacles. So I think this might be a very fruitful direction that you're going into. So maybe going into giving workshops instead of courses might be something that you'll feel is producing more, and you'll feel more confident and like, okay, yeah, this is giving me what I want. I feel comfortable. This is like abundance. There's like all these fruits growing. There's the connection to like she's like very much in control. This like culmination of like all this hard work. So I would say that what you can expect is that this is a good path for you, and just keep going down it, and like be open to seeing ways in which you are seeing this abundance, even if it's not immediate to like what you expect it to look like. Try and like look for abundance in all the things that you're doing. So they're there. So just keep your eyes open for them.
Cool, beautiful. And I just want to remind everyone that Veronica is offering a really special deal today only for everyone that came to the webinar. She's offering her water reading, normally $50, only $30 for 30 minutes with Veronica. I'm going to post the link in the chat so you can, but that's only going to be available today for you guys. And yeah, and if you ever want to book a reading with her, you can go to that link. I'm also going to share with you her Instagram. And is there anything else you want to share while we're here, Veronica?
Oh, I think that's it. I'm really excited. I'm really happy you guys could all be here and sharing this energy with me. And I hope that you like what you heard, and that you sparked some curiosities for like how awesome medieval Spain is. So yay.
Yeah. I know that I will be rewatching this recording at least once or twice. There was so much great information here, so many new portals of new information that I want to research and look into, and
So many rabbit holes.
Yeah, so many rabbit holes. I mean, Alexander the Great, I had no idea he was doing all that with the elements and all these new texts I didn't know about, and how mixed and matched things really were. And yeah, it was just so amazing. So yeah, and then if anyone, I'm sure Veronica will post this somewhere,
Yeah,
the video. So if you want access to that, definitely follow her Instagram, which I'm going to post in the chat again. Yeah, I just want to thank you so much, Veronica, for doing this for everyone. This is such a wealth of information, and it's stuff that is not, easily accessible, and you just brought so many awesome things together. You're just super talented as a reader, obviously super smart. This was so fun, and I'm so happy to geek out with you and everyone here. Thank you everyone so much for being here. I'm gonna quick plug for me. If you are interested, I have 2 or 3 days left. That's it, of enrollment period for my upcoming course, the Read with Confidence Tarot Training. If you wanted to take the Tarot Divination course, that's still potentially available as a pre-recorded course, but I'm not teaching that live again, and that might happen again with this course. So if you want to work with me, if you want to learn with me live tarot, this might be the last chance for the Read with Confidence Tarot Training. There's 3 days left. You can find information about that at tarotmysticismacademy.com. Again, if you want to work with Veronica, you can find her listing at tarotmysticismacademy.com. The links for her Instagram and ways to schedule and book her are in the chat. And I want to thank you guys so much for coming. It was super awesome. We had like so many people interested. We had like 45 plus people in this Zoom today, and I know many more people are going to watch it and get a lot out of it. So yeah, I will see you all in the next wormhole.
Yay, thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, everyone.